Welcome back to another episode of Thinking That Matters. I'm Elizabeth Mahusai, and I am here with my good friend and also client, Rudy Frederico. And Rudy and I, gosh, how long have we known each other?
Probably 3 years now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it feels even longer than that, but we started doing some work together, I know it 3 years ago. So Rudy, tell them who you are, what you do, because I am excited to dive into your area of expertise today.
Awesome, well thank you, appreciate being here. I'm a franchise consultant and broker. I'm an affiliate and partner with the Franchise Consulting Company. It's a global organization out of Miami that helps people in the franchise space. We're a fully integrated franchise solution. We're in 16 countries, so a global organization and influencing all over the place. So really love what we're doing. Our primary role is to help folks get into business by finding the best fit franchise for them. But we also work with rising companies that want to expand their business and their footprint using the franchise model, and we teach them how to do that as well, and then plug them into our broker network so that we can help them accelerate their growth faster and quicker. And we've had some great success in doing that. And it's exciting to be able to do that and watch businesses flourish. I really enjoy that part of the business.
Yes, and you've been in the franchise space like a long time. Yeah, go ahead.
34 years.
I was going to say, I could tell that the date was coming.
That number, that number's coming. I tease about having hair when I started, so, but yes.
Where did it all go?
Where did it all go? One franchisee after another. Yep.
Exactly.
No, but it's been a great run, and I love doing what we do because we help people achieve that entrepreneurial dream, but giving them the structure to be successful.
Yes, I think that's important. So let's start with the fact that I know you have been a franchise owner. So tell us about where that started for you, because I know that you had not one but two different franchises.
Correct.
And I would love for you to specifically speak to what was the thinking behind wanting to open your own franchise?
The first one was an opportunity to leverage my background in an industry that I'd been in for 20 years. There's a store that's struggling. I can take my experience, build it, fix it, flip it, bank it, move on to the next opportunity.
Oh, okay.
And so that's exactly what we did. We took a store in the check cashing business, which was my initial background in franchising. I did 25 years in operations in that space. And I said, all right, do I really know what I'm doing? So I partnered with a guy who was struggling, invested in it, turned it around, and we flipped it, and it was a successful process. I then leveraged that to go back to operations and support, and people said, we heard what you did in that store in Texas, how can you help me? And so then I had more credibility as I was being that field support coach because I'd actually lived it, felt their pain, and took that to the next level.
I love the phrase field support coach because you're in the field. You're really, your goal is to support and then obviously to coach them so that they're still making their own decisions, but you're able to help guide. You're able to help guide those decisions.
In a franchise relationship, it's a different dynamic, right? They're not employees. You can't fire them. You can't say you have to do this. I'm always selling on the fact that this is a better way to do it, and you have to trust that I'm coaching you to be successful so that you can continue to grow the business. And so it's always been a little bit of salesmanship, and let me show you how, and let me show you why. Teach people how to do things a certain way, and when they don't, why that's not working, or if they come back and say, I was not having success, well, let me show you an alternate way to do that and achieve the goal. And that's what I had some success doing over the years.
Got it. And then you opened a second franchise. So talk to me about, where did you, I guess, uncover gaps in your thinking, as it related to being a franchise owner, maybe whether you're sharing one of the struggles or, because, I think people who listen to the podcast or watch it, if they're already a business owner or maybe they want to be a business owner, an entrepreneur, sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. So what were some of the things you discovered, either about yourself or about that space?
What I learned in that process was, and in that case, I went through the full process from the beginning. And what I learned in the assessment there was I didn't ask all the right questions. What does a complete being operative there, complete day in the life of an operator look like. There were aspects of the business that I liked, and that's what we talked about, and I bought into it, and it was all great. And then there were some aspects of the business I had to do after I was in it that I didn't like, and had I known that, I probably wouldn't have made that same decision. Now, I can leverage all of that as part of my experience helping other people buy franchises as a consultant and a broker, and challenge them to ask all the right questions when they're in conversation with the brand developers, when they're in conversation with other franchisees and validating the process. These are the questions I recommend you ask to completely get a picture of what your life is going to look like before you make a decision. So it's all about the education. Be completely informed and don't be surprised later that, oh, I didn't know I was going to have to do this, or I made a bad decision, and then point the finger at somebody else. Let me arm you to ask all the right questions, and then if there's a finger to point, you have to point it back at yourself.
Yes, and that. So you were sharing with me that in your second franchise, that one of the things you recognized after you got into it was that there was a lot of like behind the desk work, and you were like, this is not me. It's not who I am. So when we find ourselves in a space where something is required of us that we don't like, right? What do we have to do in our thinking in order to not let that derail, or literally derail our business?
The easy answer is build on your strengths and get help for your weaknesses. Real straightforward. If it's reconciliation, partner with your bookkeeper, your CPA, or some professional who likes to do that stuff. There are people who like to do those things. That's not me. I like to be out in front, talking to business owners, talking to clients, networking, selling, engaging, building relationships. That's my persona. If that's not your persona, then hire that
out, right?
And sit behind the desk and do the other part. But whatever it is, get help for your weakness. Get training, get resources, and don't be afraid to spend a couple extra dollars to get it done and get it done right. Especially the bookkeeping piece and understanding the numbers, and not something that I like. I just want to hand over that shoebox full of receipts and say, deal with it. Just deal. But it has to be done.
It does have to be done.
It does have to be done. So you can't ignore it. Just find a better way to do it.
Man, I think I love that. You can't ignore it. Find a better way to do it. That's a great, that's one of those I call pattern disruptors, where we can get stuck in a pattern of thinking of, I don't like this. And so then we begin to procrastinate. We put it off. We want to avoid it. We want to pretend like it's not there. And then this is where people end up with major tax issues or accounting challenges. And so I love that, it's find a way to manage it, ultimately.
You don't want to know how much it costs to have a bookkeeper or CPA catch you up.
Ooh, well,
that gets expensive.
It does.
So it's cheaper to just do it right the first time.
Do it right the first time. Okay. So let me transition, because I know that in your role as a franchise consultant and just really being in this space, you told me that you've helped open around 850 franchises.
Best guess, yep.
Okay, that's a lot. It's a lot of hours that would, when we think about, they say, you need to invest 10,000 hours to be considered an expert in a space. I'm thinking you've had your 10,000 hours plus.
Thereabouts, yes.
Okay, so tell me about, in people that you've worked with that have wanted to come into the franchising world, and or they've come into the franchising world, what have you seen are some clear patterns of poor thinking that has really hurt them as a franchise owner?
Trying to shortcut expenses that are necessary to be successful. Shortcutting the marketing. Not paying, let me get somebody for minimum wage to do this when... And they turn over that position every 90 days, and they at the end of the year spend a lot more money recruiting, hiring, training new people all the time, instead of paying someone else $1 or $2 an hour more to just do it right the first time and moving on. So not being penny wise and pound foolish with personnel, with accounting expenses, with marketing expenses. When things aren't going well, the first thing they cut back in is marketing. When doubling down is what you should be doing.
How have you seen that really play out? Because we hear that all the time. Like that typically the first place that someone cuts is their marketing, when in fact they should be doubling down on marketing. What's the first example that comes to your mind of where that really ended up
I did some
hurting
work.
someone?
I did some work with a gentleman who was in the fitness space in a franchise, was referred to me because he was in trouble.
Okay.
And said, what can you do to help me? And he was bleeding money and it just wasn't a good situation. He did exactly what the franchise organization told him not to do, which was he went for minimum wage teenagers to run his business and didn't hold them accountable for doing their job. So when I mystery shopped, I found all kinds of problems with what was going on behind the scenes that he had no idea was going on behind the scenes. And it was really too late to really fix it. Ultimately, the business closed and he was out a couple $100,000 of his retirement money because he didn't follow the program and tried to go the cheap route by hiring minimum wage people and teenagers instead of an adult who could hold other teenagers accountable or somebody to be in charge.
Yeah.
And when people try to register for a class or whatever and never got a phone call back, it's because they were not doing their job.
Yeah.
And so he ultimately was not successful.
So shortcutting, or you used a phrase when we were preparing, cheapening out. Is that how you said it?
Taking the cheap way out. Yeah.
Taking the cheap way out. I think that is, it's often, as a business coach, it's often that I get asked, at what point do you know, right, that you should invest in fill in the blank, right? That I do think that's that's a question that people have. So how in the franchise world do folks get help in knowing like where they need to be doubling down or investing more money? Like how are they assisted or coached in this case where that's concerned, or maybe even the value of being in a franchise to begin with?
That's part of what the franchise organization should be providing. So there's a sales and development side of the business where they bring you into the business, but then the operations and support team is there to be your coach. And they're looking at your numbers and they're participating in calls with you and they're doing all the things to make sure that you're on the road to or being successful or continuing to grow your business. And if you're finding that you're struggling in an area, that should be your first phone call. Now, that should also be the kinds of questions you ask when you assess a franchise and ask other franchise owners, do you get support in marketing and in accounting and in operations, and are they responsive and helpful? And if you get yeses to that, then that's a good organization to affiliate yourself with. And if they're not, then maybe that company's not prepared to be a franchisor and maybe not where you want to put your money. So
that goes back to asking the right questions.
Asking the right
right?
questions up front.
Yeah, keep going.
So understanding that. Now, the next, if it's, I don't know the answer to that accounting question, let's get with your CPA or your bookkeeper or whatever other resource you're leaning on, or maybe it's a marketing professional. And I have lots of folks that I partner with, as well, through our relationships in chambers and so forth, that, we have marketing people or credit card people or accounting people or other resources who are good at these things. And if you're struggling in that area, ask for help. Don't just continue to put it off. The longer you delay, the worse it gets. The hole just gets bigger and eventually it'll swallow you up.
Oh, that's a good point. So that actually I think is a good segue to, because we were talking about poor thinking, right, coming into the franchising world. What about good thinking? I mean, I believe you just said one, ask for help. We need to have a mindset of I'm humble enough to say, help, I need help here.
Right.
What else would you say you've seen are patterns in people that are successful in business and specifically in the franchise space and as it relates to how they think about it?
So a great example to that question is one of the first people I put into a franchise business since becoming an independent associate with the franchise consulting company. And it was an old coworker of mine that I had worked with. And when I joined the company and updated my LinkedIn profile, he reached out and he goes, I need help. And so I get together with John and we find him a business. And one of the first things that, as soon as he opens up, he calls me up and he goes, these guys want me to advertise my services through the ad pages. And direct mail, I'm just not, he's not person who opens those ad pages.
Okay.
It comes in the mail and he throws it out. So he doesn't think that's an effective way to build his business. The key is to be coachable. When you're in a franchise system, they have tested and proven these methods. So follow the program until you can prove otherwise. So I said, John, I'm going to give you one piece of advice. Follow the program. Try it. So he put out the first mailing, and he got a $60,000 job.
Okay.
On a phone call from the first mailing. He goes, I'm never not doing this again.
I'm going to always.
I'm never going to miss a mailing. So he started his franchise in the window cleaning business with one truck, 2 employees, and himself. 3 years later, he's got 3 trucks, 6 employees, a lady who sets appointments, and he's got a lifestyle that he can, because he's following the program. But it took me having to convince him after he was already in and committed. I said, John, just trust the program. Follow the program. They wouldn't ask you to do it just to spend your money. They must believe it works.
Yeah.
And so jump in. And until it doesn't work, do it. And he's been happy ever since.
I love that. So a couple of things that you said that I think are just important. I mean, really for any business, and not even just business, this could be relationally, is be coachable. That's one of the things that you said.
Absolutely.
Be coachable. I think that's something that I see in working with folks who own a franchise, and really even just the amount of time that I've spent connecting with you and what you do, that it is truly, if you're asking the questions up front and you're identifying a franchise that works well for you, that then you have to trust that they have put in the time, the energy, and the effort to research what does work. And so then that willingness to follow the process, that was the other phrase that I think is so important of what you said.
Part of even in my role, before I introduce people to franchises, can they follow my process? And if they can't follow my process, they're certainly not going to connect with McDonald's and make the hamburger correctly, right? So if you can't stack the burger properly, you can't participate, and you're not going to be successful.
All right, so I didn't think about this until you just said that. So when you're, as a consultant, they've come to you to help them identify the right franchise, and you have a process in place for a reason. When you are engaging with someone that is struggling to follow your process, which is a red flag, right? Is that a fair statement?
100%.
How are you addressing that with them?
I'm going to say straight up, Elizabeth, I'm not sure that franchising is the best fit for you.
Why do you say that, Rudy?
Because if you're not coachable enough to follow my system, I don't foresee that you're going to be coachable enough to follow the system of whatever other franchise brand is out there, and that's just going to lead to your failure. And I'd rather not have that on my record.
But what I'm hearing is that you're willing to have a crucial conversation.
Absolutely. Around
that.
There's really 3 kinds of people out there that I identify, and I'm looking for the coachable one in the middle.
Right.
Some people are too entrepreneurial to follow other people's guidance.
Oh, that's big. Okay.
So the true entrepreneur is the person who created the franchise system, right? The McDonald's brothers and Ray Kroc and his people, they're the entrepreneurs. They created the system. Everyone else bought into it and followed it. Yep. So they're entrepreneurial, but they still needed structure and boundaries and all the other kind of stuff. And then there's the people who just need to take orders and work for somebody else. Not everybody should be in business. And so either way, if you're on the right side of that or the left side of that, you probably shouldn't be just dumping your retirement into a franchise, because it's not going to work out for you.
That is such an excellent thought process that I think viewers and those listening should really think about, is because you're right. Like I'm married to, an entrepreneur in the sense of he's very creative. So for him, let's say, to buy into a photography franchise would make him crazy, because they would want him to produce images along the lines of the repetition or the repeat of that brand. And that would make him, as a creative, so frustrated. Correct. So I love that perspective. And then I think on the flip side of that, you said on the other end of the spectrum is the person who just wants to be able to take the orders, and that they would be better working for someone to do that versus trying to buy into something.
They don't really have the acumen for business ownership, right? And so if I'm we're going through the process and they're not asking the right questions. I'm like, this may not be the fit. And I make a living on people actually making the decision to purchase that franchise, but I don't want that negative thing on my record that says this person bought one and it failed.
So you make a living on people making those decisions.
There's integrity to the process.
Which is so good, right? And that's, I mean, as a consultant, we want people to know us as someone who's going to tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And also someone that's going to do the right thing based on all of the data and the information that we're receiving. At the end of the day, you yourself are an entrepreneur.
100%.
Right? You live a commission-based life.
I do.
So I have a lot of people who listen to the podcast who are commission-based folks. I would love for you to share, like, what have been some of the limiting beliefs you've had to address in the course of your years of being an entrepreneur, a business owner, that, because I know that people are going to be able to relate to what you've said. So first, just give me one or two that man, these have been limiting beliefs that have really, I've had to work hard to address in my career.
For a lot of business owners, and it's certainly true for what I do, time management, limiting distractions, planning, and sometimes just saying no. Saying no to people who just want to suck the life out of you, right? I want some of your time. I want some of this. Sometimes you just have to say, I just don't have the bandwidth to take on everything. I struggle with that because I try to have a giving spirit, but to have to turn down some opportunity. And I learned a long time ago from one of my franchise owners that sometimes you just have to say no to requests either for your time or for people who want to try something crazy, to stay in your lane or whatever that is. Sometimes no is just the right answer. It doesn't have to be a mean answer. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be a jerk about it. You can just say, it's just not a fit for what we do.
Yeah.
And so staying in your lane, my exiting my second franchise was that very thing. This wasn't the right fit for me. And it was distracting me from being able to do what I do now, which is help people get into business. And so I can try to balance it, or I could just say, you know what? Let me just exit this, focus on what I do best, and make a career out of that, and just say no to everything else.
So there are a couple of words that you highlighted some time management, and then I heard the word boundaries, which I think is really, really important. I think in today's culture, we struggle with boundaries. We want to say yes to everything. Maybe not everybody, but I think it could be easy to want to say yes to everything. And so you talked about having boundaries, and I like to think of it as giving your best yes. But to your point, straight up, sometimes it's just a matter of we've got to be willing to say no. And I know that's something that you are persistent in working on, say no.
I ask myself, and you ask me, even when we chat, who have you said no to this week? Because I have that want to be that for everybody. And sometimes we just have to get over our concern about what other people think about us, right? Be who you need to be and who you want to be, not what you want other people to think you are. So focus on that person and then make your decisions accordingly. And that will clean up a whole lot of the drama in your life.
That is so good that oftentimes our yes is based on our concern of what other people will think about us.
Correct.
I mean, that I think is absolutely huge and such an important admonition to the listener that we need to guard ourselves and we need to make sure that we are making decisions based on what makes sense for our development, our business development. And sometimes I think when we say yes too quickly, I was just listening to something this morning that sometimes when we say yes too quickly, we're actually robbing the person to whom we're saying yes from the right person to actually fulfill that need. Because we're too quick to try to fill the gap.
Right. I can do it, but here's somebody better. And if I don't give you that somebody better, I'm doing you a disservice.
Yes, exactly. So As we begin to round this out, I would love for you to share, because you've been in business a long time. I love it when people can benefit from the wisdom of just being out there, and doing life, doing business. So if you had to give like your top 2 to 3 principles, and because listen, we get it. Not everybody who watches this or listens to this wants to buy a franchise or create a franchise, but they're in business, whether they're an employee or they're an entrepreneur business owner. Give them 2 to 3 of your like top business tips for success.
Managing time, and around managing time, focus on revenue producing activities.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So some people talk about, the jar, and you put in the rocks, and then the pebbles, and then the sand. Those rocks that fill the jar need to be revenue producing activities.
Yes.
Fill it in with the rest, following up on email, social media, whatever else are the other pieces. But the revenue producing activity has to be at the forefront of managing your time.
Agreed.
Second would be ask for help. You don't have to. And at the end of the day, most people can't do everything on their own.
Yeah.
And so if you really want to scale, if you want to move up that chart that Robert Kiyosaki, the cash flow quadrant, right?
Yes.
If you want to move up that chart and go from solopreneur to business owner, okay, you can't do everything yourself. So outsourcing, asking for help, doing those kinds of things in order to scale yourself in business.
That's good.
Is a key to being able to do that. And then you've got to find a way to unplug and recharge at some point. You can burn yourself out in trying to be everything to everybody. And so boundaries, the say no, time off, whatever that is, whether that's family time or a couple hours at the golf course, or just sometimes I'll just have to go in the middle of the day and do something different, a walk.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. Just to unplug for a few minutes, reset, keep your frame, keep your focus, ultimately be more productive.
Yeah, I love that. I think that this and computers and it used to be that people, I remember when I was working at McDonald's, to you, because you used it as a franchise example. I worked at McDonald's when I was a teenager, and I was required to take a lunch. I was required to take a break. It's like, in so many ways, that has gone out the window.
Oh, yeah.
And even as entrepreneurs, we don't give ourselves breaks. We don't take time for lunch. And we do need to have, I love that you said unplug and recharge. I thought that was so incredibly important. And something that you said to me also earlier was about investing in oneself. Speak to how over the course of your career, you've really made it a priority to invest in yourself.
I think you have to be a student of what you are trying to be. And that's always evolving. The rules in franchising change all the time. Every year, Congress changes a rule. I've got to be in tune with those things if I'm going to continue to help people moving forward. So whatever's going on in your world, in any business, the rules around human resources are changing.
Oh, that's true.
Okay, what you used to take lunch and not take lunch and whatever now is a whole lot different, with all the different rules around what you have to do and who can hire and working from home and all these new things that are out there, and what you can require of people and when you can let them go, but you have to do those correctly. So again, get the right help, right resources, person on your team, whatever that is, because the alternate of firing somebody for the wrong reasons and ending up in court can cost you way more money than what a consultant would have cost you to fix it.
Yeah,
so
true.
Think through those things and don't cheap your way through the process. Set yourself up for success.
That's so good. All right, last question. Okay. I ask all of my guests to share why you believe it is important to cultivate thinking that matters.
There is no success story that I've ever read or heard of where someone just flew by the seat of their pants and became a billionaire. Okay, that doesn't happen. So everyone who has accomplished great things did it with a plan, with purpose, with intent. I plan my calendar. I plan my time, the revenue producing time versus networking time, which does produce revenue, but in a different way. So there's a purpose and a time and a place for all of those different things. I think just being purposeful and finding that reason that drives you. Again, I tell a lot of folks, why are you doing this? Even my buyers of franchises, why are you doing this? Or why do you want to expand your business as a franchise? What's the motivation behind it? And if they don't have a strong enough why to do it, then I'll challenge them to go find one, or let's not do it.
Oh, that is so good. And that right there, I just want to anchor on that, is that why we cultivate thinking that matters is that when we cultivate thinking that matters, we have a strong why that allows us to feed the thinking that will push us to do the things that we don't want to do, or it will challenge us to hire the people that we need to hire. It will move us to say no because we recognize that by saying no, we're able to say yes to the right things that help us to grow. So with that, I want to challenge you and encourage you. Go back and listen to these principles and the thoughts here that Rudy was sharing, because always remember that when you cultivate thinking that matters, you can build a business and a life that truly matters.